Hey everyone, Kyle Woody here, founder and executive director of Jack's Caregiver Coalition, where our mission is to improve the way that guys think, feel, and act through every phase of their caregiving journey. In a moment, I'll be joined by our special guest, Mr. Eric Schepers. Today, I'm honored to be your host for our Give to the Jacks Day campaign, in which we're collaborating with GiveMN.org for Give to the Max Day, Minnesota's annual giving holiday, which is today, November 19th, if you're watching the day that we premiere. Our goal for the campaign is to raise $12,000, which will give us the ability to make 16 more stories of caregiver support like Eric's a reality. And because of a $5,000 matching grant, your donation today can be doubled, doubling the impact that you can make on this campaign. And now it's my honor to welcome Mr. Eric Schepers, our third and final Give to the Jacks Day honoree of 2020. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you.
You're looking
Thanks
good.
for having me.
Sounding good.
Appreciate it.
Eric, I'll introduce, his wife, Ashley, was diagnosed with breast cancer while 34 weeks pregnant in May of 2017. She had just delivered a healthy baby girl, and they received the devastating news that it was stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. It had spread to her liver. After her first line of treatment, she became NED, or no evidence of disease. And she remained NED until March of 2020. And unfortunately, at that time, she discovered another lump in her breast and was diagnosed with a secondary primary breast cancer. COVID-19 hit, and her only option at the time was chemo and then a double mastectomy. And we're glad to report she's currently no evidence of disease again. And so I just want to say, I know what it's like to have that double whammy of like, yay, we're having a kid, but we also have this other thing, and that is a tough pill to swallow. And yeah, so thank you for being here today, Eric, and for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually, preparing for this, recalled the first time I met you, and I believe it was Red Cow, a burger joint in St. Paul.
Yep.
Eric lives in St. Cloud, and I think maybe you had come into town for maybe it had to do with Ashley's treatment, or you had some other.
We had an appointment down in St. Paul.
Yeah.
And we happened to be around lunch and worked out where we met up.
Yeah, back in the good old days when we could meet other people
Go to the bar and have
indoors safely without a mask on, and
right.
The good old days. So yeah, I was wondering, Eric, if you could, there's not a lot of out in society, a lot of empathy or real understanding about what caregivers like you and I go through, what it means, how it affects your life. And so I wonder if you could just name some of the biggest challenges that you've faced as a caregiver.
Yeah, that's a good question, because I've thought quite a bit about this one, and there's quite a few, but to narrow it down, I'd say there's probably two of them. And the first one is managing friends and family. And the second one is trying to manage mental health for not only her, but, and myself. And seeing the two kind of go hand in hand really has to do with, let's say, friends and family. You go through, chemo and surgery, and they're worried how you're doing, how you're going through it. But then once that's over, everybody thinks, well, okay, you're fine now. You had a clean scan, you're back to NED. And they think everything's just kind of back to normal. Well, it's not. It never is. That mental challenge of every day living with cancer and being a caregiver, trying to navigate this cancer journey can wear on you. So with friends and family, it's almost like people are in denial. And I know at times I am too, but it's also they turn around and will start kind of telling you, well, how you should think or how she should feel or this or well you're going to be just fine, you're going to live a long time. Well, we all pray and hope that she does, but we can't wish it away. I can't. Her physical health, there's nothing I can do. It's in God's hands, and it's a very helpless feeling. But you know that there's nothing I can do. But I can choose to try to have every day be a good day. And that can be the challenge, because all of a sudden, she might be on Facebook and read a post of somebody in her support group, and all of a sudden she finds out, oh, they're in hospice. Well, we just went from a good day to an okay day at best. It kind of brings back, the thoughts of, what you're going through day to day. And, and that can be a challenge, because all of a sudden you can turn around and you're thinking you're having a good day. And then you're like, what just happened here?
Yeah.
And then you try to get that out of them, they eventually will tell you. And you're like, okay, so now we're kind of managing that a little bit different. Or like I said, family, I mean, they've, when you turn around and hear them say, oh, you're going to be just fine. Well, we hope so, but how do we, there's a good chance that might not be it.
Yeah, I've heard of that as being referred to as toxic positivity, and I think sometimes what those that aren't in the game every day like us don't realize maybe is that sometimes we do need folks to acknowledge how just really terrible this situation is, and you can't. I like to say spray perfume on a pig, right? Like it's still a pig, like it's cancer and it sucks, and even being in remission, you have that anxiety all the time of the next scan, and like you said, that the crazy, because I experienced this with Sarah too. Her support network, which of course is filled with people who have her disease, um, they unfortunately, it's not a disease that you survive. Unfortunately, for most people, like you might die of something else, but chances are it's going to take your life, and no one knows when, no one knows how, and so when you're surrounded by these people like Ashley is that are losing their lives or experiencing significant setbacks, Ashley feels that like in a very tangible way, and then as a result you feel that in a very tangible way. Like you said, it changes. It takes a potentially good day and just ruins it. I remember, Sarah, I would come home from work and she would just be completely bummed out because she just lost a very dear friend. And how could she not be, right? Like,
Right.
you, of course, she's sad and she's grieving. And so, yeah, that's to your point about managing your mental health, and how do you do both, right? How do you engage in these relationships, but also, grieve, and you as a caregiver, I suspect, feel pressure to keep her feeling hopeful and optimistic, um, and that's
Right. I mean, it's challenging. Like you said, around the time of the scans, I mean, the word scanxiety, as soon as they make that appointment for their next scan, it's they're anxious all the way up until they get the results,
yeah,
hoping that they're good. And especially a couple of weeks before, I mean, that anxiety can kick in. And I'm learning more now on how to kind of manage, that time period. But other people, in a sense, I mean, they don't get it. They could be like, well, what, what's wrong with her? Well, it's like, well, she's got a scan coming up. I mean, she's going to be anxious. There's going to be a lot of things going through their head, and they just don't think of it. And I don't really expect them to, but sometimes you just wish people would take a step back and say, what is she really going through? I mean, she's not obviously done with chemo, done with surgery or whatever. They think, well, what could be wrong? Well, there's, like she's said before, people come up and ask, how are you doing? Well, she says, well, obviously I'm doing okay or doing good, but on the inside, it's a whole nother ballgame. And that's where it's hard for people to just take a step back and realize that there's probably more going on than just what's on the outside.
For sure. For sure. And so I'm hoping now to shift it a little more in the direction of Eric. And a lot of caregivers we help are very equipped and able to talk about their loved one that they care for, but they're a little less comfortable talking about themselves. And because they probably, you probably don't get off asked a whole lot, how are you, Eric? Right?
No,
It
not very often.
definitely happens, but it's not the it's definitely more folks asking about Ashley, and there's nothing wrong with asking about how Ashley's doing at all. What we hope is for more folks to ask how also the caregivers are doing in their challenges. But before I get to that, I want to remind everyone we're here to raise funds for Give to the Jacks Day, Minnesota's annual giving holiday. We have a terrific, generous $5,000 match. So your donation in any amount can be doubled, and I want to stress that any amount is meaningful. It doesn't need to be a big number. We are grateful and humbled by every single donation. Currently, at the time of this recording, we're at 14% of our goal, so we have a long way to go, and we need your help to get there. So thank you for considering supporting our campaign today. And back to you, Eric. I'm wondering, who have you been able to lean on, uh, you specifically, for support during the hardest of times, right? Like this, you've been in this game a while, and there's probably been good seasons and bad seasons and sort of just mediocre. But in those really tough times, really stressful times, who have you leaned on the hardest?
That's a good question because I mean, obviously, I mean, you have friends, you have family that I can pick up the phone and call anytime. But you can, in a sense, it's like they just don't quite get it at times. I mean, they'll sit there and listen, but they don't know what you're going through. And I'd say, honestly, probably the relationship that me and Ashley have is we lean on each other a lot. When we're going through something, it's just I've always had open communication. We're honest with each other, and we every step of this journey that we go through, we talk about it together. Like we just built a new house, and before that house, before we decided to buy the land and start building, we were like, okay, what if something happens to her? Am I going to be able to afford this house? You know, every step of the journey, we're constantly talking to each other and figuring out how to navigate it. And honestly, I mean, she's been my best friend going through this. So she's been the one that's been there for me, and I mean, vice versa. And that's, I guess I just don't have that one person that I just can always call and they understand what you're going through in a sense. But that's part of joining Jax, where now you were meeting more people, and it's like, if I called you up sent you a text like, hey Kyle, I need to talk. I know that you'd, be like, hey, yeah, hey, what do you need?
Yeah.
I call you up, and now I can talk to somebody who gets it in a sense. Because it's hard to vent to people who just don't quite get it or haven't been through that. And you don't want anybody experience what we're going through.
Right.
But, it makes that conversation with them a little bit harder.
Yeah, I love that, your answer that, basically it's Ashley, right? Like, she's the one, and that's a very I won't say very common answer. I've heard folks say no one, there really isn't anyone that I can lean on in a meaningful way, which is also common that I'm just going at this alone, for the most part. But I love I love this idea that people like Ashley who are facing this horrible disease, are also caregivers in a sense that she's taking care of you, right? Like you guys are in this amazing relationship, and some people, we sometimes call Ashleys of the world caregetters because they're receiving our care, right? But some folks don't like to think of it that way. It's to them, it's more of we're care partners and we're both
Right.
going through this. We both have cancer and we're both here for each other. No, to the extent that we can be for as long as we can be. That's what we're going to do. So I just want to acknowledge Ashley and thank her for being on your team and supporting you. And it'd be great to see that team grow and see more people, um, join in and support you. And some of that comes with education, right? Like the folks that they haven't been through this. There's only s- there's only they can only show up in a certain way because they haven't experienced it, right? Like
Right.
you can't totally connect with them in that way, but they can show up in other ways.
Right.
Sometimes it's
Oh, no, right. And, in the family and friends, I mean, the things that we've been through, I mean, they've been awesome. And, not trying to sit there and take anything away from what they've done for us by any means, but it's like I said, you go through like the chemo or surgery, and then they wonder how you're doing, and then as you get through it, they think every life moves on in a sense.
yeah,
And people tend to forget that there are daily struggles that go along with this.
yeah, right. I use the analogy of just like having a baby, right? Like you you have the big celebration and there's cigars and presents and a shower, and then eventually everyone goes back to their life, and
Right.
but you still got cancer, right? You still, even with no evidence of disease, you're still suffering from the anxiety, the trauma, the grief of the dreams and the life that you probably had planned for yourselves and
Right.
all of that. So thank you for sharing that with us, Eric. And I'll just mention, I think a tangible way folks can help people like you, Eric, is by supporting this campaign. Because if they support Jax, um, Jax supports you, and so that's a very tangible, very easy way that um, they can demonstrate to you that they care about what you're going through and they want to support you. Which brings me to my last question, Eric. Or can you share with us any stories about, you engaged with Jax? I don't know what year. I'm guessing it was 2018.
It
Uh,
was Well, it's actually kind of a funny story because she ended up going down to Minnesota Oncology for all her treatments, and that's where her oncologist is. And I believe she learned about Jax through Minnesota Oncology. And and she wanted me, she said, "Hey, I want you to join the support group." I'm like, what's this? Where is it? Well, it's in the cities. I'm like, you want me to drive an hour every time to go sit in a circle, say, "Hi, my name's Eric. My wife has cancer, and now I'm an
right.
alcoholic." I mean,
In metal chairs, like in,
right,
yeah.
yeah. And that was my first thought. And it's like, I'm like, so she started explaining it to me. She's like, "Well, they do some fun stuff, and they have the beanbag tournament down at CHS Field in September." do you want to go? And I was like, we've been through a lot. We just have a new baby. That's like our only weekend open for a long time. I go, let me think about it. So that went on. And then we were down at that Metastatic Breast Cancer conference in early November, and you were there and had a booth. And she's like, well, why don't you go talk to him? I'm like, yeah, we have all day. I'll get to it. Well, we had breakout sessions, and Dustin and Kim were hosting that breakout session. And after that, I started talking to Kim a little bit, and she looked at me and she said, "You need Jax." And it's like, if I hear it from somebody else, that tells me, it's like, then that opened up my mind a lot more. So we were actually going to stop by your booth, and you just happened to be gone for the minute, but I grabbed your card, and that's when I reached out to you. And then that's when we ended up meeting for lunch at the Red Cow.
Yeah.
But then my first event was the first Topgolf in January.
Okay. That was your first outing.
Yep.
That was that this year? No,
No, that would have been January of 2018, I think.
Yeah, right after they had opened that place.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Well, and what was that like for you, the Topgolf thing?
That was after that, I was pretty much had my mindset. I'm like, I'm gonna be a part of Jax for a very long time, because I think there was 8 or 10 of us, and never met these guys before in my life. We sit down, start golfing, grab a beer, eat, talk, and eventually somebody breaks the ice, like, hey, what's your story? What brings you to Jax? And you start talking, and everybody goes through their stories, and you keep golfing or whatever. But by the end of it, you get that, or I got that feeling that loneliness of being a caregiver, somebody else understands it. Somebody, it might not be breast cancer, but at least somebody else can relate to some of the struggles that you go through to, this journey. And it was comforting, that you knew somebody else was out there, that was going through what you're going through. And that was huge for me, and from then on, I was pretty much hooked. I'm like, I gotta be more involved in Jax.
Yeah, that's terrific. I love the story of, there we go again with Ashley, right? Like being your caregiver. She's the one that's saying, "Hey dude, you need to check this out. At least check it out," right? You're
Right.
like, yeah, I'll get to it, I'm busy. I got other things to do. And Ashley remind you again, "Hey, you need to check this out." And then Kim, right? Like so often it's the ladies in our lives that have the wisdom to see that we're in need of something maybe that we aren't even aware
Right.
of. And
For as
and
much as we hate to admit it, they're right more than we give
yeah,
them credit for.
for sure they are.
It's true.
And they're taking care of us even though they're going through this
Yeah.
horrible thing, which is inspiring to me. And I love the Top Golf story of, like you said, you don't, especially your first program, that's the hardest one for any Jack's person to take part in, because it's nerve wracking, right? Like, what's this going to be like? What are these people
Right.
going to ask me? What, you just have all these questions. And I think for the vast majority of folks, after they have the courage to get through that one, they realize this is nothing but fun and renewing,
Right.
and there's there's
No,
nothing
right. She
stressful about
said
it.
this to me one time. She's like, why do you get, because we did the indoor skydiving.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I did the Nintendo Switch. We did the golf thing, and all of a sudden one time she goes, why do you get to go do all the fun things? I don't understand, sir. Why do you get to do all the fun? I'm like, well, you signed me up for this, I guess.
I'm just doing what you told me to, honey.
Right.
I'm just a pawn in this game.
Right.
That's funny. Yeah, so and then thank you, Eric, for joining us as a member and, giving us that monthly contribution that makes us, it's what gives us the room to breathe and help us make sure we're here for a long, long time to keep doing this and be there for every other Eric that comes along, because unfortunately, it's happening every day. Someone else is getting this news that they're in this situation, and it might take this guy's wife or friend, a year to convince him that he needs to check it out. But whenever that time is, we hope to be there
Right.
for those guys.
Yeah, no, and I've mentioned it to a few people that I've ran into, and they're, I tell them about Jackson, and I wish they would at least come to one and experience it, but that's also their decision. But at least I'm letting them know that there is something there if they need it, because I think honestly, once a guy goes once, I mean, they're going to be hooked, and they're going to be like, yeah, you know what, I do need that time, and I find out that their spouse that they're being the caregiver for is almost like telling them, you need to go, you need to do this. And of course, what do guys say? Nah, I don't need that,
Yeah.
And it's like, I just say, if you ever want to do it, just give me a call. Well, I'll bring you down to one. It's
Yeah,
worth it.
if nothing else, think about it like, what sort of fun thing have you done for yourself in the last 2 or 3 months? And for a lot of guys in this situation, the answer is nothing. And
Right.
and that's finding joy on your journey, I think, is key, and that's what can recharge your batteries and help you show up better for Ashley, down the road, and be, keep your mental health. Back to your earlier point about your biggest challenges, keep that sword sharp. And
Right. Recharge the batteries.
yeah, so, and you're a golfer, and you probably hadn't been able to hit the ball much. So even if the other guys weren't there and all you got to do is just pound some balls by yourself, that would have been good too.
Right. No, right. I mean, it's
Just fun.
kind of a mental break for a little bit.
Yeah. So Eric, I just want to thank you for your time. You're in the middle of a lot of stuff, and your move and your new home, and so it means a lot to us that you take the time to not only support us financially, but also just with your time. So thank you, and for sharing your story. I strongly believe that sharing that story gives you power over it, um, and it's less of the story having power over you. So thank you.
No,
Mm.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And in closing, I also want to thank our virtual producer. He's in the background here, Mr. Chris Cloutier. Thank you, Chris. As a volunteer, he's supporting this campaign, doing this production free of charge. So a lot of the nonprofits raising funds in this climate are required to pay for that service. And thanks to Chris, 100% of the proceeds go directly to our mission. I also want to thank our other two Give to the Jacks Day honorees, Mr. Bob Breck and Mr. Aaron Hill. Thank you guys both for supporting us. And lastly, I want to thank each and every one of you for um, for considering helping us reach our goal, and helping us write 16 more stories of support for the we could call it Give to the Erics Day, right? Like, for all the other Erics, and we hope to be able to grow into St. Cloud, so Eric doesn't have to drive to the Twin Cities to do his thing. These are all ambitions we have, but with your support today, we could support 16 more guys like Eric. So thanks everybody for joining us. Have a great weekend, and we love you.